In this tutorial, we will be replicating Moho tutorial 1-3, drawing complex shapes in Blender by adding clouds and a tree to our existing terrain from tutorial 1-2. So fire up Blender and let's get started. Now before we begin, let's double check a couple of things here in Blender. Let's go to Edit and Preferences, and once again, make sure that the Node Wrangler add-on is turned on. And it is, so we are all set to go over here. Let's go into the render properties. We should be set for Eevee to keep things simple. And for output, let's keep it relatively small. I'm going to do 1280 by 720 just for fun. And leave it at 24 frames per second and 250 frames. The Moho tutorial 1-3 has us create a new layer and draw a cloud. And it has us do a sort of serpentine semi-figure eight type of cloud. So I'll go ahead and do that in Moho. So going over to Moho, we create a new vector layer, we name it Cloud. And the one thing I do love about Moho is anytime you create a layer, you can just rename it off the bat. So we go up here to our Add Point tool, and we start drawing our cloud. You notice mine are kind of jagged because by default I tend to like curves turned off. That's okay. So it's now complete. Oop. I left gradient on. So let's color this a nice bright white color, and let's make the stroke blue just for fun. And make it a little bit thicker. There we go. Now let's use the curvature tool here to make our cloud puffy and round. There we go. One cloud. Let's go and do something similar in Blender. So here's our terrain. We'll leave this here for now. We may remove it later. And we have it named hills, of course. So we're going to hit Shift A. And I'm going to show you a different object that you can mess around with. We're going to be playing with a metaball today. So we're going to go down to metaball here, and we're going to click on ball. And this ball appears. So let's hit S to scale it. And we're going to reduce it down because we're making a cloud. And we're going to grab and hit Z to bring it up. And now using Shift mouse to kind of drag us around. So let's move our cursor a little closer. So let's hit Shift right click, and it moves the cursor closer over here. So any new object we create will appear over here. So let's hit Shift A again and go to metaball, and we're going to grab a capsule. Yep, it turned that one sideways. That's fine. So now you notice after adding this one, anytime the radius, this color radius around the metaball comes into contact with another one, Blender will automatically start smooshing them together. And this is because metaballs are these sort of mathematically defined shapes. So let's go into the X view. Let's hit G to grab. Let's pull us away for now. Let's hit R to rotate and Z to restrict the Z axis. Rotate this. And we'll double check down here to make sure we're rotated 90 degrees. We're pretty close. And now we're going to hit S to scale. And let's hit Z to restrict that to the Z axis because we want this to be kind of wafer thin. There we go. And let's hit S again to scale and hit X. Kind of get this close to the width of our sphere here. So let's hit grab and let's bring it over here. Oh, these aren't quite aligned, so let's go Z to go over the top and hit G to grab again and bring these together. And let's make sure, using, again, Control or Shift right click, and then we'll go over to this view and hit Shift right click again. And this will put our cursor close enough to anything new that we add is in close proximity. Let's hit Shift A again, find another, and we'll throw in another ball. And let's put this one right here. Let's make S to scale it down, grab, right? And just keep making them and keep adding them. Again, S to scale, G to grab. This one I'll throw in right here. Typically, like clouds, they tend to kind of... There we go. We'll make this kind of a little more irregular. We'll do one more on top, I think. Shift A, metaball, ball, grab. Maybe scale that a little, and let's make this a little more irregularly shaped. Scale Z. Let's scale it on Z, and we'll rotate it, like I said, to give it a more irregular shape. And now we have something that kind of resembles a cloud, but it's in pieces. You look over here, you got M ball, M ball, M ball, M ball, M ball, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So make sure the bottom one is selected. Hold down Shift, select all the way to the top one, and we are going to hit Control P and click on Object. And what this does is it smooshes all of our metaballs together. Tee-hee. And you can see that M-balls 0 through 3 are now part of, are nested underneath M-ball 4. And this is because in in Blender, almost anything can be the parent or child of almost anything else. Unlike with Moho, where you have to use a group or a bone or a switch layer or something like that. Let's right click on this collection and we're going to choose Convert to Mesh. And this will turn it into a familiar mesh. So let's hit Tab. You can see what the mesh is made of now. And it's still a little lumpy, so let's go over here to the wrench and we're going to hit Add Modifier and we're going to go to Generate and choose Subdivision Surface. We'll leave it at 1 level. Keep it nice and simple. And if you want to add a little more irregularity, hit Tab to go back into edit mode, choose our proportional editing, make sure that's turned on, click on any vertex in here, hit G, and maybe shrink your area of effect here a bit. And just pick a couple of spots to add some irregularities. And one last thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the X view here. We're going to turn this on, which is X-ray, which allows us to see the opposite side of the mesh. And we're going to select the entire bottom here. So all those should be selected. We're going to hit S to scale and we're going to choose, hang on, let me turn proportional editing off. It's easy to forget. Hit S to scale, Z to restrict to the Z axis, and we're going to make this almost flat. And then we're going to hit G to grab and Z to restrict to the Z axis and bring it up. Because the bottoms of clouds tend to be completely flat. So let's tab out of that, and here we have our cloud shape, I should say. Now, the next step, let's take a look here in our manual, is we add an effect to the cloud, and so we're going to be adding the soft edge to the line effect. So let's go over to Moho, and we'll go over to the Select Object tool, select the object so it turns black and white, and we're going to go into Advanced over here, and under Effects, go from Plane to Soft Edge. And we can adjust the radius here of the blur if we want, make it smaller or wider. Well, let's hit OK. Click off of that. And you may not necessarily see it right now, so I'm going to hit Control-R to do a quick render. And now you can see it. Makes our cloud nice and hazy and lumpy. Now we'll do something different in Blender. Blender can kind of do stuff like that, but I wanted to take this opportunity to demonstrate volume. With our cloud selected, highlighted in orange, let's go over to Material. Hit the plus sign to assign a new material slot to the object, and hit plus to create a new one. And we're going to call this Cloud Interior, I guess. And while we're at it, let's rename the metaball to Cloud. Now that we have Cloud Interior created, we can go into Shading. Let's adjust our view here, zoom in a little bit, and let's have some fun with our cloud. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go hold down Control, hold down right mouse button, and we're going to cut a slash across this BSDF to disconnect it. And that is because we're not using the principled BSDF for this. We are using, if you hit Shift A, go to Search, and type in Volume, we are going to be using principled volume. And we're going to drop that down here. We're going to connect volume to volume. And it kind of turns the cloud into a sort of bland, hazy spot. Now you can also just kind of mess around with this, raise the density. If you like how this looks, it's a cloud, you know? But let's add a little character to this cloud. So let's start by hitting Shift A, go to Search. We're going to go to a wave texture. Plop that right here. Now, anytime you want, you can go to this Add menu up here and you can see exactly what all of the nodes are that are available to you if you want to actually make a list for yourself, that sort of thing. But many users find Shift A doing a search is quite a bit faster. Now we want to control the distribution of the wave texture. Now why would you want a wave texture? So let's have some fun with this. Let's hit Shift A, search, and let us look for a color ramp. You'll see this used a lot in nodes. So we're going to connect the color to the factor and connect the color output of the color ramp to the color input of the principled volume. Now, you may not be able to see the wave right now because we haven't told, well, you can kind of see, these hazy circles here. Let's raise the density. Now you can really see them. Now we don't want them oriented like this, so we want a way to control how our waves are oriented. So let's click on the wave texture and hit Control T. And that of course adds our texture coordinate and mapping. We can leave it on generated for now. Let's adjust the Y here. Let's go to Y and hit 90 because we want these waves to be more sideways. And even though this is called a wave texture, wow, these are more like stripes. Really, that's very strange. Well, yes, they are stripes. You can make them more wave-like by playing with this second value here that says distortion. And several textures actually offer distortion. What it does is it takes your very uniform texture, and once you add, it starts to squigify it. Blah. It's almost like the surface of Jupiter now. Blah. So let's adjust our colors just for fun. Now, if you slide this ramp over, the dark stripes get thicker, and if you slide the white over to the left, the dark stripes get softer. Now let's dial back the distortion. It doesn't have to be that bad. Let's go to about a 24, and let's adjust the scale up a bit because we want a lot of detail on this, just for fun. And make sure your density is set to about 5 here. I think that's where I've got it at. Yep, 5. And if you want your cloud to give off light of its own, you can adjust the emission strength and emission color, that sort of thing. But for now, this is what we're going to use just for a basic cloud. And so now we have a basic cloud. We click off of it, go back to layout, click off of it, and we got this, yeah, it's kind of a messy looking cloud, and it's kind of dense. Let's hit 0 to go into our view, and let's go over to the object properties. Click on our camera, and just for fun, rotate the X so that the cloud is in view. And just for fun, let's hit F12 and do a quick render. You know, it's a little bit blocky also. There are ways to fix that, but for now, you know what? We got a cloud. Go ahead and close that. Our next step in the tutorial is it has us replicate the cloud, where you select the cloud and you copy and paste it using, you can either use Control-V, Control-P, or you can use the edit menu. So I'm going to use Control-V, Control-P. So we go to our selector, click on our cloud, hit Control-C, and hit Control-V, and then drag the new cloud off of the old one. Now there's another way to make a separate cloud, because you notice these are basically two objects on the same layer, the cloud layer. We could also duplicate the cloud layer itself, and that would make a second cloud. And the instructions also have us click on this one and adjust the size here with the manipulation tool. Okay, let's do something similar in Blender. Now there are actually three ways, well, several ways actually, to duplicate objects in Blender. There's a multitude of ways, really. Let's click on our cloud here. So for the first one, just for fun, we're going to hit Shift D. And now we've got a second cloud, and let's restrict that to the Z plane or the XY plane by hitting Shift Z. So when you hit Shift Z, what that does is it restricts the movement to everything except the Z axis. So now we can move this along the X and Y. That way it will always be at the same level as the original. We can click over here, we can place that over there. And let's hit Tab to go into mesh, hit A to select the entirety of the mesh. Let's also turn off X-ray mode here, up here at the top. Hit S to scale, make it a little bit bigger, just like we did with the other one. Hit Tab to go out of edit mode back into object mode. You can see them side by side. Now there's another way to duplicate items. So this creates an entirely separate mesh. If we hit Alt D, you notice I've got another cloud here. We hit Shift Z to restrict it to the XY axis. Let's place it over here. Now the difference is, whereas this cloud over here, cloud 001, is an entirely new mesh on its own, this one cloud 002, which was created using Alt D, is going to constantly reference the original mesh. And this is actually useful sometimes because you can use this to kind of help save a bit of memory. Now there's a third way to duplicate objects, and this way is a lot closer to the way we just did in Moho. I'm going to click on the original cloud, hit Tab to go into edit mode, hit A to select the entire mesh. And now we're going to hit Shift D while we're in edit mode, and hit Shift Z to restrict to axis. And you notice while I'm copying in edit mode, an additional cloud appears because this cloud here is constantly referencing this mesh over here. So anything that is created from this mesh is going to be replicated in this object, in which case a whole new cloud. Let's delete that. Hit delete to delete that. Choose vertices there. Hit tab to go out of edit mode back into object mode. We'll stick with clear 3 clouds for now. Let me hit 0 to see how these look. Yay! But that is how we duplicate things in a couple of different ways, I should say, that we can duplicate things in Blender. All right, now we are going to make a tree. So let us go back to our tutorial and let's make a tree. So start a new layer, make it brown, give it a border with nothing special for the effect, and just start adding points until you have something vaguely trunk and branch shaped. So we go in here, we hit plus, add a vector, name it TREE. Turn off the soft edge, set it back for plane. For black, set the width for 4, set the fill for a different shade of brown from the ground. We go over here, turn on add points, turn off sharp corners, and turn on auto stroke. So let us draw our tree. So click and drag and click and drag and click and drag and click and drag, and up goes the trunk, up goes the branch, top off the branch, down to the fork, add the second fork, add a little more root, connect the final root, and shazam, there's our cartoony tree. Now, just for fun, let's go to the curvature tool and adjust this curvature so it's a little more pointed. That's a little more like an actual tree. And you know what? Hit save so that we don't lose this. And if you don't like where these are positioned, you can grab some points, move them around. Let's see, let's hit curvature again and make our roots pointy. Why not? There is a trunk, and it is brown. So let us go back over to Blender and do something similar, and we're going to use holding down Shift key. Let's select all of our clouds and let's hit H to temporarily hide them out of the way. Next, let's go to the Z view up here and hit Control, and let's put this where, and let's hit Shift right click where we want the cursor to be. That is where our tree will start. Here's what we're going to do. Hit Shift A, go to Mesh, add a new cube. This is a big cube. Hit Tab to go into, well, first before we do that, we're going to go back into modifiers and we're going to add a subdivision modifier now. This is a good time to explain exactly what modifiers do. This has added one layer of subdivision surface to the cube, which is kind of what makes it turn into this 24 edge die, sort of. However, when you hit Tab and you go back to Edit View, you notice it's still got the same corners that the original cube had. And this is because subdivision is kind of like a post-mesh effect of sorts. It's sort of an indirect manipulation. So let's hit G and Z to grab and bring this up and make sure that the whole tree is popped out now. Let's hit S to scale, shrink it down a little bit, and then let's hit G and Z again to bring it a little closer to the surface. That's good right there. All right, let's make it taller. Let's you can drag click and select these top 4 points, hit G and hit Z to restrict to the Z axis, and drag it up, and then click here. There you go. And now this is a bit of like a stretched diamond. We don't want it to look like this. So here is a new tool that we are going to demonstrate today, which is loop cut. So we hit Control R, and you can see this yellow box appear when you get near the center of the trunk, but also if you put it in different places, this loop will appear in different ways. We want it to be in the center right here, so let's click here. And now that that loop cut has been created, we can now drag it up or down, and you can see the modifier changing the shape of the trunk. So let's bring it all the way down here. Let's make one all the way down here. Hit Control R again, create another loop cut, bring it all the way up to the top. So now we made it more cylindrical. So, but we need to make it wider now. So let's hold down Control and click our top 4 spots here until we have a plane. But also another thing we can do is we can hit the number pad 3 to go into face editing mode. And now let's hit S to scale, and we want to restrict this to the Y axis because we only want it to swell out in one direction. And let's hit grab and Y as well, because trees, they tend to lean a bit, so let's restrict it to the Y axis and kind of drag it over once again. All right, now let's extrude some branches from the top. Let's hit number pad 2 to go into edge mode. So click on this edge here. Let me zoom in a bit. Click on this top edge here and this other top edge here. And right click and choose subdivide, and this will split the top of our tree trunk in half. Now we're going to introduce a new tool. Let's hit 3 to go back into face mode and click on one of these two. So we now have two tops to this tree. So now let's hit E to extrude. And what E does is it lets you stretch what you've selected outward from the rest of the mesh. So let's bring this up and then hit G to grab and Y to restrict it to the Y axis. Drag it off to the side here. Now you can see in the subdivision modifier that this is covering up part of the actual mesh. But here let's select the other half of this top, E to extrude, bring it up, click to finalize it, then grab and Y, and we want it to be, you know, a slightly different angle than the first one that we made. Now again, these are finishing up really pointy, so let's hit Control R, add a loop cut here, and wraps around and bring it up and click up here. And now you can see how it's nicely capped, and hit Control R over here, add a loop cut over here, drag it up and click, and we've got a very kind of basic cartoony trunk. Going over, let's hit Tab to go back into object mode. I'm going to go over to this subdivision modifier that we put over here. We're going to click on this down drop and we're going to hit apply. And what this does is it takes that first level of subdivision surface and it now makes that a part of the mesh. If I hit Tab, you can see that the mesh is now more complex. There's lots more of these lines that we can manipulate. But let's go back to object mode. This might sound weird, but we're going to add another subdivision surface back to it to give us a little more detail. And this is because we need to draw our roots. So let's hit Tab, go into edit mode, hit 1 to go to vertex manipulation, pick one of these vertices at the bottom, go ahead and go up here to the top and turn on proportional editing. Let's hit G to grab. Let's shrink our proportional editing down a little bit and hit Shift Z to restrict ourselves to everything but the Z axis. That way these will stretch straight out. Let's do one there. Grab, Shift C, let's do one over here. Make it a different shape. Let's circle around to the back. Let's grab this one here. G, Shift Z, and stretch that one out as well. There we go. Now we got some roots. Let's tab out of that. Now would be a good time to save. Control S. Let's right click on that and choose Shade Smooth to kind of give it a smooth look. Let's tab back into edit mode, right click, and we're going to add a couple more loops here and there. So let's hit Control R, add a circle here. You can right click to put it exactly evenly in between. So Control R, add a loop here. So Control R, add a loop here. Control R, loop here. Control R, loop here. Control R, loop here. Because in general, this is a good thing to start practicing now. You want your faces to be approximately as close to the same size as you reasonably can. All right, let's hit Control S, and now, all right, hit Tab to go back out to object mode. Let's go over here to materials on the right. Hit plus to assign a material slot, and click New, and we're going to call this tree bark, and create a new shader for our tree. Let's go to the shading tab up here. And let's scroll out and get our tree in view. All right. So what is bark made of? Well, bark is kind of, when you think about it, they're basically kind of vertical slices, but they're kind of distorted a bit. So that's kind of similar to the wave texture. Let's hit Shift A. Now let's go to search and add a wave texture and plop it right here. We got to make room for our color ramp because chances are if you put a texture in, you're going to be putting in a color ramp. And we hit Control T to put our texture coordinates on, and we're going to set UV to vector, and let's turn our Z rotation to 90 degrees. Okay, let's take our color and plug it into our base color, and here we have some vertical stripies. It looks like our tree's been to prison for a little while. So let's raise our scale a bit because we want a lot more of these coarse stripes. There we go, that's pretty good. Hit Shift A, search, look for color ramp. You know we were going to need this. Drop it right in between here, and Blender will automatically connect the wave texture to the color ramp and the color ramp to the Pencil BSDF. So let's pick some colors out for this. I think, so the deep interior bark, which we're going to represent with the dark stripes, should stay very dark, maybe like a dark gray, maybe just a hint towards orange. And this other stripe, let's pull that back to the left because we want this to mostly be the majority of the exterior. Let's make that our tree brown. So let's bring that down at a little brown. Now it's okay if this color is vibrant because we're going to be mixing a noise texture with it that's going to take out some of that vibrancy. Okay, it's a little too skin tone, I think. That's a little creepy. Let's drawing that down a bit. There we go. There we go. I like that better. All right, take the roughness in the principled BSDF over here and turn it like to about 90. This will cut down a lot of the reflection. Also in the wave texture, you'll want to bring in some distortion to make your not too much. You don't want the waves to be straight up and down. And let's raise our detail just a little bit to about a 5. Now let's take this mapping and let's hit Shift D to duplicate it and put the duplicate just below the original, and let's plug the UV into the vector of this one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift A to add a noise texture. Plug the vector into the vector. There we go. And this is because we're going to adjust this to a different scale down here. So let's hit Control Shift left mouse button to connect this directly to the material output. And you can barely see anything on the tree. So let's raise the scale up. We want this nice and visible. You want this fairly detailed. Remember, this is like the fine detail of the bark. So the wave texture produces the coarse detail. We're going to use the noise to create the fine detail. So this looks pretty good. So what we want to do is we want to pull X down a little bit low, like using shift drag. And then let's raise Y a bit higher. And this will make this a little more, make our details kind of vertical. Now let's hit Shift A to add another color ramp. Color ramp. Plug that bad boy in. And we want to go, rather than black to white, we want to go kind of black to gray. Let's set this for like a really low gray, really dark. Let's Control right click drag to slice off this connection. Let's hit Shift A. And we'll do a search. And we're going to go for a mix color. Mix. Let's connect that here and connect the color output from the color ramp on there. And then connect the BSDF back to the surface. And you can't see too much right now, so what you want to do is you want to play with the factor a bit. Let's play with that up to about a 75. There we go. Yeah, maybe even an 80, 85. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. Not bad, not bad. You zoom in there, you get a little bit of the distortion from the noise texture. Let's raise that up a little bit higher even, and maybe, of course, you want the roughness super high on that. And maybe even a touch, like just a touch of distortion, just for fun. Let's zoom out. All right, there's some tree bark. These are a bit stretched. We're not going to be able to see those later, though. Don't worry about that. All right, let's drag our material output and our principled BSD over a little bit because we're going to add one more thing, two more things specifically. Now we messed around with the bump map before. So we're going to put the bump map here, and we're going to take color, and we're going to plug that into the height, color from our color ramp into the height, plug that normal into the normal over here, and we're going to set the this is going to be our coarse bump, so we're going to set the distance to about 4.5. And so now you can see the dark parts are starting to recede a bit, and the lighter parts are starting to stick out a bit. But that's still a little too neat, so we're going to go hit Shift A, and we're going to do search, go for another bump. And let's plug the bump into the previous bump. And the neat thing about bumps is you can go normal to normal to normal, and you can actually plug several of them together. So we're going to take the color out of the color ramp over here and put that plug it into the height. Let's move this bump down so you can't see like so that the way the lines aren't going through each other. And let's add a distance of about 0.225 here. And look at our tree here. So this now basically combines a mix of like, so you've got coarse bump here from the bark itself, and then fine bump here from the noise texture. Makes a decent looking tree. So let's hit Control S to save and go back to layout. All right, now we need to make some leaves. Going back to our tutorial, scroll down a bit, pick out a green color and make some leaves. So let's go over here, create, no, you don't have to create a new vector with this. We are just going to add a shape to the existing one. So let's click on our create shape, change our fill color to, let's make it a nice bright green. Let's draw our leaves. Let's see, we want to drag in. Just make ourselves a nice, happy little tree blob. Here's our tree blob. And let's go back to selection and let's go to stroke width, which I believe is here, line width. Let's click on each of these and shrink them down. Click on that, drag it on top, maybe resize it a bit, and make our Moho tree. Hit Control S because we are going to be using this scene for lesson 1-4 as well. So for this lesson, we are actually done, for the Moho part, we are done with 1-3. So hit Control S to save. Go back over to Blender. So our tree needs some leaves. So let's start by hitting Shift A, go to Mesh, add a cube, hit G to grab, Z to restrict to the Z axis, drag it up, put it near our tree. Oh, by the way, let's make sure we rename our tree to tree trunk. And this new cube we will rename to F2 tree leaves. We could add a subdivision surface using the add modifier menu. You can do that if you want. However, subdivision surface is used so frequently that it actually has its own shortcut, and that is control number. So we're going to hit control, make sure this is selected, and hit Control 3. And you can see a very large amount of EDDL has been added to our mesh. Let's hit tab though, let's alter our shape. Maybe the base should be bigger, so let's go to face shape mode. You can also do that with the button 3. Select the bottom, hit S to scale, and Y to scale along the Y axis. Let's stretch that out. And let's hit 2 to go to edge selection. Let's hit G, and let's hit Shift Y to restrict to X and Z, and just kind of make this a little awkward shape like that, sort of. Very good. Okay. Hit tab to go back. Let's hit A to hit all and hit S to scale, make it a little bit bigger. Let's turn proportional shading off. We won't be needing proportional shading. Hit tab to go out. Okay, that's a pretty good size. I think the bottom should be a bit flatter though. Let's hit tab to go back in, and let's hit Control R. Add a loop cut, and let's drag that loop cut just like we did before with the tree. We can drag that down to make our the base of our tree a little flatter. Okay, tab. Now we can go out, grab our tree leaves, and with the G, and hit Shift X to restrict, and then place it where you approximately where you'd want it. That's pretty good. Okay, and right click on it, shade smooth. Lovely. Let us go over to materials once again. Click plus to add a material slot to this object. Hit plus to add a new. Change the title of it to say leaves. And hit enter. Go over to the shading tab to go into shading. Here we go again, my friends. Print starting with our principled BSDF. Let's start with Shift A and add a look search and look for a noise texture. If you think that noise texture gets a lot of mileage because it's just a really good representation of a chaotic surface, you are correct. Let's hit Control T on that to add our mapping nodes. Let's hit UV to vector. And now let's hit Shift A to add a color ramp. Click that there. Go from factor to factor, and then from color to color. And you won't see a lot, so you have to raise the scale once again. Let's raise it really high. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the dark spot here. Let's roll in so we can get a good look at this color ramp. And use the middle mouse button to slide over to it. Let's bring the dark slider forward, and what this will do is this will start to make actual dark spots on our tree here. And now Let's go over here to white. Let's pick our darkest tree leaf color. Let's bring it into green. Bring the strength of that down. Okay. Now let's drag that down. Now it becomes even more spotty. You do want, there we go. That's a pretty good spot right there. Now hit plus to add another one. It'll add it in between, but you can drag it out. And this will be our lighter tree color. So what we can do is we can use the eyedropper tool here to select our previous color. And then click it again, and then just raise that up a bit. And now you've got a somewhat more distribution of leaves here. Okay. Now we're going to have some fun though. Click on the black color here and click on the black bar at the bottom here, and we're going to drop the alpha all the way down. Go ahead and click out of that. You notice it's not turned clear here though, and that is because you have to tell Blender that you want to use alpha. So let's connect the alpha to the alpha, and now you have like kind of cartoony tree leaves that you can see through. Ain't that something? Let's turn our roughness all the way up so this isn't so shiny. Now if we want to add some bump, let's go ahead and just have some fun and add some bump. Search bump. Here we go. Plop that hair. Plop the factor to the height, and then the normal to the normal. This may take a second. There we go. And we will need to raise the distance. There we go. Pretty good. Just not a lot, to about 0.5. Now we got a slightly rougher surface. Before we finish up, let's go back to the layout. Let's click our tree trunk, and let's go over to our square object properties here. Go to relations, and click on this dropper next to the object here in parent, and we'll make that our tree leaves. No, let's hit Control Z and not do that. So this illustrates something very important when I make, which is the importance of transformations and things like that. Because of course, when you resize an object in Moho, for example, and you copy and paste into it, whatever you copy and paste into it inherits any transformations that you made to the layer. This is very true of Blender as well. You notice the coordinates of the tree, the center of our world here in Blender is this coordinate point right here. And the tree's position is based on that point. However, when I go into relations and click on this eyedropper and make the tree leaves the parent of the trunk, the tree moves. And the reason is because the tree's position is now based on that same relative distance from the origin point that's the center of the leaves. So let's go back to our tree and let's eliminate the parent right quick. So let's click on the tree leaves to object here, go to apply, go to all transformations. And what this does is it places the tree leaves origin point at the center point of the scene as well. So now if I click on the tree trunk and I click on this eyedropper where it says relations, now I can click on the leaves, neither of them moves. And now you notice the tree trunk is gone from our scene collection. That is because it is a subcomponent of the leaves. So now I can grab the leaves, I can move them around, and the tree trunk goes with them. You can parent and child just about anything to anything else in Blender. So that is all I have for today. Tutorial 1-4 will be a two-parter, but both will be posted together. The first part, we will make a 3D version of Frank for ourselves, because I don't want to ask viewers to have to download anything. We don't learn anything by just downloading assets, and I don't want to ask you to trust a strange download link. And for part 2, we'll actually rig Frank with bones. Anyway, thank you for watching. Click all the usual YouTube buttons, especially like, and I will see you next tutorial, and happy animating.